HDMI 2.1. But what exactly are the benefits of HDMI 2.1? And is it worth upgrading your TV for the next gen hardware? In short, HDMI 2.1 is the latest version of HDMI that distinguishes itself by being capable of transmitting an impressive bandwidth of 48 gigabits per second in the cable. This is a huge improvement from the previous 2.0 cables, which carry 18 gigabits per second. Bandwidth determines the max amount of data the signal on the cable can send. The higher the resolution and the frame rate, the more data is needed. If you're playing a PS4 Pro or Xbox One X in 4K, you've been using a 2.0 cable, which can support up to 4K resolution at 60 frames a second with static HDR. HDMI 2.1 is capable of 4K at 120 FPS or 8K at 60 FPS. It also supports dynamic HDR lighting on a frame-by-frame basis, as well as a color gamma of BT 2020 and 16-bit per color. This means it's capable of supporting TVs that have a wide color gamut, making your image look even nicer. HDMI 2.1 includes Auto Low Latency Mode, or ALLM. This will tell your TV that you're playing a video game and instantly switch it over to its low latency game mode setting. HDMI 2.1 also has VRR, a built-in variable refresh rate that keeps your display's refresh rate in tune with the supported device's frame rate so everything is smooth. The new consoles will support VRR between 30 and 120. So what does this all mean for your fancy new console? Well, both the PS5 and Xbox Series X use HDMI 2.1 to enable games to run up to 4K at 120 frames per second. If you're buying an Xbox Series S, the console also has an HDMI 2.1 port, but it instead targets a resolution of 1440p at 120 FPS, which HDMI 2.0 can already support. But using 2.1 on the Series S will still give you the benefits of dynamic HDR as well as improved color and subsampling. The other benefit of HDMI 2.1 is 8K support. Both the PS5 and Xbox Series X are capable of outputting 8K, but very few games will run in 8K for the foreseeable future, meaning there isn't much of a reason to worry about it for gaming. The big selling point of HDMI 2.1 right now is the improved color and 4K at 120 FPS. High frame rates like 120 FPS have typically been the domain of PC gamers, but now console gamers can enjoy it too. A few examples of games that support 120 FPS include Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition and Dirt 5, as well as the multiplayer modes in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and Halo Infinite. A few previous gen games will also be getting 120 FPS updates for the new consoles, such as Gears 5, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and Rainbow Six Siege. As many PC gamers can attest, frame rates above 60 FPS do lead to a smoother gameplay experience and provide a competitive edge in multiplayer. If you're interested in having games run the best they can or want every advantage in Call of Duty you can get, HDMI 2.1 is for you. But what do you need to actually get HDMI 2.1 running? For starters, you'll need a 2.1 cable. Presumably the PS5 and Series X will come with one in the box, but on the off chance they don't and you need to buy one, look for the phrases ultra high speed, HDMI 2.1, and 48 gigabits per second. Always check the specs on the product page and look at reviews to make sure the cable isn't cheaply made. The major thing you need to worry about when it comes to your money though is having a TV that supports HDMI 2.1 and 4K at 120 FPS. Being a newer technology, you're only going to find this in the latest models, and even then not all of them will support it, so make sure to check the specs on the product page as well as reviews. If you're planning on owning both next-gen consoles or want to plug in your PC as well, it's worth noting that most TVs with 2.1 only have it in one HDMI port, meaning you'll need to swap around system cables. The only TV we're aware of at this moment that has HDMI 2.1 in all of its ports is the new LG OLED CX series. It also supports G-Sync and FreeSync, which is great for variable refresh rates in PC gaming and is in my personal opinion the best high-end gaming TV on the market that isn't ridiculously priced. In fact, if this video does have you interested in buying a TV, we have an article over on GameSpot.com rounding up the best 4K TVs for next gen, including the LG CX I just mentioned. The link is in the description below. But all of that said, if HDMI 2.1 doesn't sound like something you have to have, you can always wait until the technology becomes more widespread and less expensive. The reality is most games that aren't multiplayer experiences aren't going to support 120 FPS for a while, and the ones that do might not even be at 4K resolution, opting instead for 1440p or even 1080p. Heck, we'll probably still be getting big budget graphical showcases that shoot for 4K 30 FPS. The improvements to color, dynamic HDR, and the variable refresh rate offered with HDMI 2.1 are still major advancements that more next-gen games will take advantage of. But how worthwhile these improvements are is all dependent on how you feel about your current TV. If you just upgraded your TV recently and don't care about 120 FPS, I wouldn't worry about HDMI 2.1. But if you've been waiting to get a whole new setup for the next gen, then definitely consider HDMI 2.1 when looking at new TVs. If for nothing else than to give yourself more options in how you play your games.